This is E&P Reports, a service of Editor and Publisher magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And brought to you this week by Viafora. Viafora partners with over 600 media brands to engage, convert, and monetize their digital audiences. Using best-in-class engagement and content moderation solutions, Viafora helps companies create active, civil, and loyal online communities, all while driving higher registrations and subscriptions. Viafora. Learn more at viafora.com. That's Viafora.com. And greetings once again, Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. And if I were to say Schneps Media, would you know who I'm talking about? Well, it all started in 1985 when Victoria Schneps Eunice created the Queen's Courier in her living room. It's a fascinating story. She created a brand new local newspaper in Queens, New York. But as time moved on, and after a few recent acquisitions, Schneps Media now claims and is the largest local media company in New York State, with hundreds of employees, over 70 separate titles, and has branched out into podcasts, various events, and a lot of niche products and services, serving the entire New York City metropolitan area, and now also in Philadelphia. Joshua Schneps, that's Victoria's son, is the publisher and CEO today of Schneps Media. And we're going to chat with Josh and learn a little bit more about how he manages the company, what he believes is important in order to be aggressive and be profitable, especially during a global pandemic, and more importantly, how does he feel about the future of our media in general? So join me now as we explore New York City's largest local media company, Schneps Media, as I go one-on-one with Josh Schneps. Hey, Josh, welcome to E&P Reports. You and I have never met face-to-face, but here we are meeting virtually. So from Tampa Bay to the Big Apple, how are you, sir? Where are you?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Now, which city are you in right now, where we chat with you?
I am in Brooklyn, in our Brooklyn office.
Okay. Is that kind of the home office for Schneps Media?
It depends who you ask. My mom works out of Bayside, Queens, so she'll probably tell you that office, and I work out of Brooklyn, so I'll probably tell you this one.
Oh, that's great. Now, let's just first tell the story of Schneps Media. I think it's fascinating. This was started by your mom, right? She
Yeah.
started her first newspaper in the living room of her home. Is that correct?
She sure did, yep, in 1985.
Tell us the story. I mean, she was motivated to get more involved in the community, so she created a newspaper, right?
Well, my mom's got a fascinating story, and she's really, an amazing woman. So my oldest sister, who was 11 years older than I am, I'm the youngest, was born mentally handicapped. And this was in the 60s. And my parents were young. They're probably in their early 20s. And at that time, there really were not many services, and parents didn't know what to do. And they were told to bring her to a new institution, which was built on Staten Island, called Willowbrook. And Willowbrook was a state-funded institution for children and adults with mental disabilities. And over some period of time, my parents started to realize that there were some problems there. And my mom started picketing. She literally started a group to picket, because what happened is Rockefeller was the, at that time, governor, and slashed the budgets. And she was picketing to try to get funding. And Geraldo Rivera came in with his cameras.
Wow.
And showed the world that there was like atrocities going on inside.
Oh my God.
And there were children on the floor in their own feces. I mean, it was really horrible. And from then on, it really kind of brought visibility to the cause. My father filed a class action lawsuit, and my mom's picketing turned into a nonprofit which started group homes. And that really started the movement nationally to go from institutions to group homes. So it was really phenomenal what they both did. But what it showed my mom was the power of the press, because she was there picketing and nothing was happening. And then Geraldo came with his cameras, and change happened very quickly. So she was a school teacher. She had done some other things with her career, and she decided to start a local community newspaper in Queens, where she lived, in
That
Baysock
was
and
called
White.
the Queen's Courier, correct? The first
Correct.
title. Yes.
And she started with a longtime daily news guy, because she was really into interacting with people in the community. He was really a professional journalist. But over time, she ended up buying him out because he was very big into politics, and she really wanted to be about advocacy. And that's really where it started.
So from the living room of your mom's home, the Queen Courier was the first media property of now the Schneps Media. I got to call this an empire. Your list, you've 70 separate newspaper publications. Am I correct, sir, right now?
Newspapers and magazines, yeah, 70 plus.
And they're all very, very hyper local. I mean, it's almost like you're definitely serving small communities in a big way with print, right? I'm assuming you're still very bullish on print. These are printed products that you have in these markets, correct?
Yeah, I mean, our big philosophy is that print is still the driving force of the business, but you cannot have one vertical. You can't have a newspaper. You have to have a media company. You have to have a company that's print, digital, events, podcasts like we're doing, video. You have to use these fantastic brands and their reach to be able to do many other things.
But for example, in Queens, you have a newspaper called AM New York Metro, correct? But you also have the Queens Courier, the Courier Sun. I mean, you've taken Queens and subdivided it into the physical neighborhoods they are.
Well, it's one of the largest boroughs. Obviously, Queens and Brooklyn have over 5 million people between just the two boroughs. So each one of these boroughs is larger than maybe a dozen different states individually in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And not only are they big, but they're extremely diverse. So what you'll find is that each pocket of these boroughs are quite unique. So, we have to have unique content to serve those individual communities.
All right. So, how large is the editorial team now for Schneps Media? How many people do you have full time? Let's start with that, writing for you at this moment.
That's a good question. I'd probably say off the top of my head, 40.
Okay. And of course, you have part-time stringers and other voices that contribute to your publications as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have one editor for clusters, or is there one person in charge of each individual market, or do you kind of have one guy
Yeah,
overseeing?
it depends. I mean, in most cases, it's by the market, but then we have like niche publications that have their own editors that are like within those geographic areas.
Give me an example of one of your niche publications, one that you're most proud of right now.
Well, I mean, I don't know most proud of, but I mean, talk about a niche. We have a newspaper that's for a co-op. It's called the North Shore Towers. It's one of the great communities in Queens. It's right on the Queens and Nassau border.
I know where it is, yeah.
One of the wealthiest zip codes. They have their own country club, their own golf course, and we have a monthly newspaper just for them. And that newspaper we do with the management company. It's delivered door to door to about 2,600 apartments every month.
Wow.
And that content is only about that community. So, that's kind of a niche within, a community.
It must be hard for the salesman. Well, how many sellers have you got? Are they full-time, part-time? How do you employ your sales team?
It's full time.
They're
We probably
full-time?
have some people that are commission only, but the large majority, and that's probably another 60 people.
All right, so you have 60 sellers with so many different ways to give an advertiser targeted reach. In other words, and I'm just talking about the print products. If
Sure.
someone was in front of let's say, a heating and air conditioning business in that region, they can say, well, look, we can give you North Shore Towers. We can give you the community around here. Your sellers really have to adapt into what we call a solution-based sales process, right? Learn the niche they're going after and then target it properly.
Listen, that's the easy part. I think print is probably one of the easiest things to sell.
Okay.
The really sophisticated part is when you have to talk to people about the different offerings across platforms, particularly digital, because there's so much to know. Full page, half page, that's easy.
Right.
Obviously you have to know your demographics and know your circulation. But I think the hardest part is really training your sales team or having the people that are sophisticated enough to really understand how to sell someone digital print events and podcasts and webinars and events, to really have a conversation with people to understand what is going to work for them. Because for me, it's kind of like you have to come in there platform agnostic and think about what is really going to drive results for this person. And a lot of times I think it is print, but it's a combination.
Now, your most of your publications are free. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah, a large majority.
So your websites are wide open. You don't have them locked down to
We don't.
right.
No. Really, I think most people are just trying to figure out how to build audience. I think if you get the audience up, then you can start to think about, other opportunities. But I will tell you, it's critical that we've invested in digital for so long, especially with the pandemic, because having a very large audience has opened up a lot of things for us to do.
Do you sell any programmatic as well beyond your websites? Are you into digital services right
We
now?
don't do digital services, but we do serve programmatic ads on our sites when we have inventory available, for sure. Because now we have about, I would say, close to 10 million page views across our sites on a monthly basis.
Wow. That really puts you in the big leagues in the New
Well,
York region.
New York is a competitive market, though, New York City. You're
Right.
talking about, obviously, we serve New York City, the five boroughs. We serve Long Island all the way out to Montauk, both the North Fork and South Fork. We serve Westchester and the city of Philadelphia.
Now, obviously, the hyperlocal advertiser must be your meat and potatoes, right? Because you sell a very, very narrow niche product in each of your cities, or I shouldn't say cities, I should say neighborhoods. Would that be the best way,
Yeah, I
or
mean, I think the,
regions?
the biggest detriment to all of, I think, local media is the local business. I think the local businesses are getting decimated. It's a big issue, I think, across our industry because, I mean, it's almost like our industry. Before COVID, things were tough. But
Right.
you add COVID, and how do you think a local business that's competing against Amazon's feeling these days?
Of course, especially if they're retail
So I
based.
think local business is really difficult. So, I mean, I think healthcare, banking, finance, um, home improvement, those are very strong categories. In certain markets, real estate is really strong, especially we have a really strong digital product in some of our markets. So, but I think, local retail is really, I don't know how much of it will come back.
What about sponsored content? Do you have your reps doing a lot of that as well, allowing the kind of the merging of church and state in your?
Well, it's not necessarily about merging church and state. We sell sponsored content digitally speaking,
Mhm.
and we label it as such. We actually have someone on staff full time that writes it, and we've expanded that digital offering. But yeah, I think sponsored content is one of the most valuable things we offer because not only do they get a large audience through our website, but we have large email database of subscribers. We have about a 500,000 email subscribers, and those are to all different markets or niches based on people's interests. But we can write a story about someone. We can send it out through a dedicated email. We can put it on our Facebook channel, our social, all the social channels, and we give people really, strong analytics. So they're knowing how many people ended up on their landing page.
Wow. 500,000 email subscribers, and you slice and dice them in a million different ways, I bet. So you have local newsletters that you push out, and you can use that into
We
regional
send
stuff.
those 500,000 out on a daily basis, but they're
Yeah.
going to all different types of audiences, whether
Wow.
it's geographic or interest.
You mentioned a real estate vertical. Is it for the entire region, or you have various different real
Well, we
estate?
really have two very strong real estate verticals, both residential. One is called Brownstoner, which is for the Brooklyn market.
Hmm.
It started off as a blog many years ago, and it has a tremendous audience. Brownstone Brooklyn is obviously in very high demand, and the market has exploded over the last 15 years.
Right.
So we have a website called brownstoner.com, which is all about residential real estate, and it has a thriving kind of online community there. I mean, people will go on there and ask, who can recommend someone to fix the facade of a, 1800s brownstone. And there's dialogue going on. If you go on there today, you'll see constantly people talking about message board that's extremely active, which would probably be impossible to start today because of Facebook, but
Or
because that audience has been there for so many years. And then we have one for the Hamptons, which is obviously one of the top markets in the US, called BehindTheHedges.com, which is all about, luxury real estate and how to make it better.
well, you have various podcasts too. How many of those do you produce on a weekly or monthly basis?
Yeah, we produce about a dozen different podcasts. I just started my own, so I'm
Really?
having fun with that. And my goal is to just speak with like top New York leaders. It's called Schneps Connects. I just interviewed, which was fascinating, the CEO of Northwell Health, which is the largest healthcare system in the state of New York, the largest employer. It's like a $15 billion business. And he was really nationally recognized for their response to COVID in the state of New York. And then we have, my mom does one called Power Women in Business.
Wow.
And Power Women is one of our strongest brands. We have events where we recognize women in business, networking events in all the boroughs of New York City and Long Island. And those are like 5 or 6 annual events. And we have kind of an alumni group there of tens of thousands of people that we've recognized over the years. And then, we do podcasts for Gay City News is one of our top performing podcasts. So, I mean, many different topics. Brownstoner on real estate. So all different topics are the podcasts.
Well,
you mentioned one of our newest endeavors.
You mentioned events pre-COVID. That was one of the top new revenue solutions that newspapers were exploring. There was a lot of buzz about building events for local communities. Gannett was all about that, as you likely read, and many had jumped on the bandwagon. Now we're in a COVID world, but you definitely sponsor. I mean, according to the research I've done, you've got dozens of local events in the communities you serve. Are they kind of all on pause right now, or are you trying to do them virtual to keep?
So yeah, that was a big issue for us because we produce so we have like live events, and then we have our kind of business or business to consumer events. So we have a whole group of different events. So we do about 100+ events a year.
Right.
And those events are anything from the Power Women event that I told you about. We do about 5 or 6 of those a year based on different geography, to health expos, to real estate conferences, to wine and food events, I did an event called the World's Fair at Citi Field the last 2 years, where we had 10 to 15,000 people come out to experience over 100 different diversities of food and a beer garden. So, we did it a lot. So it was very scary when COVID hit because obviously, what do you do? And I have to say, we have an amazing team that we were able to pivot. And we now produce webinars on a daily basis, literally on a daily basis. And we are creating our events virtually and live broadcasting them. So we have done probably about a half dozen events in the last 3 months. It took us a few months to kind of figure out how to pull it off.
Wow. So you're you're moving and jibing. You didn't let COVID I mean, obviously it's impacting your business. There's not one business sector that's not impacted, but you've definitely adapted to a virtual world. Do you think when we're in this post-COVID, whenever that happens, that you'll be circling back and having those big events again? Or do you think that virtual may be the way to go for some of these?
No, I'm bullish that people want to see people.
Really?
I mean, I think people are going to want to get out, and I think that the demand is going to be pent up. People are going to want to get out. They're going to want to, network. They're going to want to have fun. So I think that the events will be bigger than ever. Now, it might take into, late next year or the following year, but I think it'll come back. I mean, listen, I have 2 small kids at home. I love them, but can I sit at home all day, every day? It's too hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's too hard to get work done. And I think, collaboration is important. I think it's very great having Zoom to collaborate, but I think at the end of the day, people are going to want to be around others.
Great. All right. So let's talk about management philosophy. You got a huge team. You've already let me know that you just, between editorial and sales, full-timers, you have over 100 people reporting to you and various offices throughout the New York area, correct? I mean, what do you look for in a manager? I mean, what you obviously have a very aggressive company. What is the perfect candidate for someone to join you at Schneps Media? Someone with an extensive media background, with B2B experience. What are you looking for when you bring someone on board?
I think the biggest thing is personality. At the
Okay.
end of the day, my mom built our business on she is the master network. I never met anyone that could work a room better than my mom. And I think, at the end of the day, you have to connect with people. I think this industry and many others, people can learn if they're smart. I mean, having the background doesn't hurt. But I really think our best managers are terrific because people embrace them and they want to do better around them. So I think strong personality of being able to inspire people and get people working hard and motivating people. I think that that's probably um, the biggest thing that I look for in terms of managers and in terms of all the people that work for us.
You're CEO of the company. How do you structure it? Are you actually out there working with the local sales reps? Do you have a management tier? I mean, how are you running the company on a day-to-day basis and keeping this energy going from your brain down to the street?
Yeah, so it's kind of unique. I think I really kind of got into the business the right way. I was an investment banker out of college,
Hmm.
and I thought that that was the way to go. I kind of had a sense that I wanted to get into the media industry because I went to the media and telecom group, but I was working 120 hours a week. I literally would take naps on the floor, and it was a cutthroat environment in terms of people wouldn't even say hello to you in the hallways. I mean, it was kind of crazy. And I believe in very strong work ethic, but I wanted to work for myself if I was going to work like that. So my mom tried to have me work for her out of college, and I really wanted my own experience. So I did investment banking, and then I went to work for my mom. And she had started a new newspaper as a partnership with another person, and I went to that neighborhood to start a local newspaper from scratch.
Really?
And it was a phenomenal experience because I did everything. I built a route. I, wrote stories. I took pictures. I did door to door sales. So it was really a phenomenal experience to be able to really learn the business by building something from scratch and no pretenses, like literally everything, take out the garbage, whatever had to be done. And, by the way, I still have to do that, but, it took a long time to really understand how to grow the business. And I think, from that experience, I kind of understood how to do a lot of different roles. And I think that's very valuable because if you're going to ask someone to do something, having a sense of how it's done is critical. I still love to do that, even with WordPress when we build out our sites,
Hmm.
is having a knowledge of how, pages are built. And I don't have to have all the knowledge, but I think just a little background of what it takes, even when you're hiring, to have that sense.
Well, do you
So
manage do you
now,
manage through managers below you, or do
yeah,
you go
now
one-on-one with
unfortunately,
some of the people, or
people
both?
say, well, how'd you grow? How do you do it? At the end of the day, we have a terrific team in place. So
Okay.
now, I mean, I really focus on strategy and sales. I still love to do sales. So
Hmm.
strategy in terms of, what are we going to do next and how are we going to do it? And sales. I would say that's where I spend the majority of my time. But we have management meetings. I mean, I'm sitting on all the editorial Zooms and the sales Zooms. And but we have managers that oversee every department now.
All right, let's talk about sales. Obviously, you've got the hyper local play in place, which everyone says is where we're supposed to be as an industry today, where most media has pulled back and become more regional. New York is a very media market. I mean, you got television, obviously, which is regional. You've got radio that's regional. You've got cable out there. Now you've got over-the-top TV, which can be hyper-local or regional. Have you cracked the code with the agencies? Are you picking up that regional business and using that into your hyper-local publications and sites? Or, I mean, what is your percentage, if I may ask, of revenue agency-based that wants to buy your network versus the hyper-local business that wants just to be part of the neighborhoods that you serve?
We deal with a lot of agencies, but it's not necessarily the agencies saying we want the New York City market.
Really?
It's a lot of times they want to reach Queens or they want to reach Brooklyn. So, we do deal with a lot of agencies, but they're not really the national. We get national, but not a lot of national. So we
Really?
deal with a tremendous number of agencies, but I would say it's more local to our markets agencies than it is kind of national saying I want the New York City market.
My background, as you likely, maybe you do know, I was a revenue generator for the industry for 20 some odd years, and I've been in markets big and small. what we do, making appointments and sales calls. We used to always say that we preferred smaller markets because we would be in front of decision makers. When we got into the big metros, we were always getting to the gatekeepers and not the final decision maker. How much of your sales process is truly talking to the guy that writes the check, and how much of it would you say is agency driven, where you're selling to a human being that has to pitch? I'm trying to get a ratio of agency versus local business in your.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Off the top of my head, I would hate to throw out a number because I'm not 100% sure. I will tell you that the local business is our foundation.
It
And
is.
then I would say that the agencies are everything on top.
So are you building a lot of ads for your advertisers then? Are you doing a lot of creative?
Yeah, we still do a lot of creative. I would say
Wow,
it's, I mean, off the top of my head, I would probably say 50-50.
that's amazing. So
Yeah.
you're beating the bushes. You're going to have to sit down in front of an advertiser and build that ad, where when you're dealing with an agency, you're negotiating space, you're negotiating a CPM, and they're doing the creative for you. So you're
Yeah,
out,
well, sometimes it's good because they will pay, for regional ads, which come at a higher rate.
of course.
But then again, you have no relationship. They could be here today, gone tomorrow.
Hmm.
So, there's benefits and downsides, I feel like, to both.
You were approached a while back. I was just checking the history of here, um, where one of the New York publications, I don't know if I would have mentioned or not, was trying to buy you guys out. Am I right? I mean, or try to pick.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting story.
Tell me about
So
that
I'll,
because
I'll try to tell you quickly, and
yeah,
it's amazing how things work out in life. So my mom started the Queen's Courier.
right.
Now the reason she called it the Queen's Courier is because she grew up in Brooklyn, and in Brooklyn there was a paper called the King's Courier,
Oh
and
yeah.
the King's Courier was phenomenally successful. They had like a 48-page pull-out classified section, a 48-page auto section, an entertainment section. I mean, it was a huge, I think it was one of the largest groups of community newspapers that I've ever seen in terms of success and ads and reach in such a big market. And my sister, my older sister, worked for News Corp, and her boss she was close with, and her boss not only was the publisher of her division, but also became publisher of the New York Post. And me and my mom used to go see him to kind of just brainstorm with him on their Sixth Avenue, offices in Manhattan. And we went for lunch there one day. He said, "How about we buy you?" And me and my mom looked at each other like, "Well, they want to buy us?" And at that time, we only owned the paper in Queens.
It was just one paper then.
It was a group of papers, but it was
Right.
all in Queens. We had a Spanish paper at that time and a couple of other things, but um, and they said to me, "Josh, you're going to have a long career with us. Vicky, maybe, we'll give you a year package." And at that time, my mom was like, "Oh, it's over." But what they did is they ended up buying our competitor that was across the street from us. Literally, my mom competed like toe to toe with this other newspaper group, and you could see them across the street. And then they went and they bought that group in Brooklyn. And then they went and bought a group in the Bronx. And, I was worried. Here I am. I said, "Yeah, we didn't sell. We were the first ones they approached because of the relationship." And they went and bought all of our competitors. And here you are. Now we have to go against a public company against our newspaper. We ended up buying a paper in Brooklyn, and we started growing slowly. And probably about 5 years into it, we realized, listen, we're so involved in the community. We're on the front lines. They would have all their managers go to Sixth Avenue and spend the day, going over the numbers while we're out there, working it. And News Corp split their company. They put the newspapers in one corporation, and they put the movie studios in the other. And that was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. So I called up the CEO. I said, "Would you sell the community newspapers that you bought?" He said, "I'll have the CFO call you." I had the CFO. He came to my office. Went to his office. I made him an offer. He said, "What, are you kidding me? Get out of here. Never call me back." About 6 months later, I get a call back. "We'd like you to come back in." So I start negotiating. Turns out that the person who ran the company for News Corp ended up buying it. He
Okay.
bought it along with his wife, and his wife owned a group of community newspapers in Manhattan. 2 years later, they sold to us.
So that's
So
how you really.
it was really,
That was the big expansion.
and then we ended up owning the King's Courier that my mom had named her newspaper after. Our competitor, our biggest competitor, that was our like arch rival in Queens. and we entered the Bronx market and we entered the Manhattan market.
All right, so that was the magic day where you guys went from a smaller company to the largest. I mean, let's be honest, you are now the largest media company in the New York area, correct? When you talk about scope, size of employees, or
I'm not sure, but I would say, hey, if we're not, we're one of them.
right. So, what was
So,
it like that magic day when you went from something you were managing on a smaller scale to suddenly having this? I mean, that must have been a real eye opener for you and your mom to
well,
suddenly.
I had been disappointed for 2 years because I thought I was going to own that company 2 years prior.
Okay.
So I had been very disappointed. I had really seen, what we could be because we know the business so well. We love the business and we know the business. We're passionate about the business. So I really, the biggest thing it was for me, honestly, Mike, was it gave us a tremendous management team. It gave us more depth and it gave us the opportunity to make many more acquisitions, which we made since then.
You do say on your website that you are the largest local media company in the New York State. So I guess you define that by not, compared to the national newspapers like the New York
Yeah,
Times.
or television, I
Right.
mean, I don't think it's
Exactly.
fair to, you can make a lot of comparisons, but I think as far as, local media, what I consider local, they used to consider, Metro Dailies local. That wasn't ever local in my mind.
You were interviewed recently, and I love this. I think it was by My Magazine, by maybe previous
I
owner.
loved it. I love
I've
it.
only had the magazine for a little over a year now, but you said that you're bullish. I'm putting word. I'm paraphrasing. You're bullish on digital. In other words, if you are not uncomfortable going to first press first. In other words, if the story is big enough, you'll break it digitally first, correct? Or get it into that email blast, as opposed to saving it for the print product. So you are a true believer in multimedia in that sense. Or can I use the term digital first? Is that kind of your
Yeah, I
philosophy?
mean, sure. I think at the end of the day, you have to treat your website like it's a business.
Okay.
And if the website is your business, are you going to hold a story? You have to treat it like it's its own business, and you have to treat it like this business needs to thrive. How am I going to make it thrive? You can't be worried about what's going to happen to the newspaper. Now, that's easier for us to say because we're not selling a paper. We don't rely on subscription revenue. Many others may, and that complicates part of it. But at the end of the day, hey, if you don't do it, somebody else is.
There you go. So you're
So,
breaking stories on a digital
oh,
level all the time.
absolutely. We just broke that, someone running for mayor of New York City online. Yeah, I mean, as much traffic as we can generate of quality traffic, right? I mean, I don't need people coming from Hawaii to our website unless they're on vacation and they're, living in Queens. So we want that local, traffic. But at the end of the day, yeah, you have to treat your websites as a business and grow that business. And, I think the biggest point is that if we did not have the traffic, the email newsletters, the social following, we would have been decimated during COVID. But because we have that readership and those eyeballs and those offerings, it's opened us up to do a lot of things that we could not have ever done during these last few months. And
Yeah,
I think
you
that
are you.
would be the picture going forward. I mean, I don't think there's, any crystal ball there.
All right, so let's talk about the print product as far as scale goes. Do you own a press? Do you come off of your own press, or you farm out your printing?
No, we outsource all of our printing.
All right, and are you using some form of scale to keep your costs down? Do you run? Are the papers all look alike? Do they all come off on the same day? Are you? Are
I mean,
you
the scale that we have is we print about 1 million copies, I think, a week.
okay?
It's crazy. So that's the scale. And we obviously, because of the volume that we do, we, try to use that to our advantage in negotiating everything.
Do you outsource distribution, or is it your own team dropping these puppies all over the place?
We have a mix of both.
Okay,
Yeah.
so distribution is a little bit of both, but you get it out there quickly the way you have to do,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
All right. Why
Yeah.
and on the screen for those of you that are not watching us on the video version of this podcast, you say print, which we've discussed. You say digital, which we've discussed. Events, obviously, you're very bullish on those. You also have the word broadcasting. What do you consider broadcasting, and what are you doing now with Schneps Media in the broadcast sphere?
Yeah, for us right now, it's largely podcasts, and we're getting into doing more and more video. I think video, we put a little bit of a pause on what our, probably larger ambitions are
Hmm.
during COVID. But yeah, I mean, I think we want to treat each part of the business as its own business.
Okay,
So we kind of really put it out there in terms of, this is a business and we're going to try to grow it.
you seem nerdy enough. If I want to say one, I'm going to say, I guess it's two words or one word and a letter, 5G. What does that mean to you today? And how prepared are you for this 5G revolution at Schneps Media?
I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's on their phones. They've been on their phones for a long time. So, it's just either you embrace it or, watch somebody pass you by. That's it. That's at the end of the day.
Do you envision a team of reporters then that are going to be shooting their own video with every story that they do? Are you thinking ahead in that? Because with the world of 5G, every reporter could instantly be a newsroom, if you follow
Yeah.
my logic. And
I
New
mean,
York City is obviously already wired for 5G.
Yeah, I think the opportunity there is to do a lot of video. I mean, I do want to do whatever we do high quality.
Hmm.
So, I think it's hard to just tell a journalist, all right, while you're standing there, shoot the video, write the story. But I think you have to try. So I think we'll test a lot of different things and see what sticks and what doesn't.
Excellent. All right, so we're getting near the end of our journey. You're obviously bullish on the industry. The future. Uh, COVID's over. There's obviously a Facebook, Google world out there right now that we're competing with for local advertising. Are you going to keep expanding Schneps Media? Are you comfortable? I mean, are you is this a good time for expansion in your opinion? Things are pretty
We
cheap.
always want to look to grow. My philosophy is if you don't grow, you die. But,
Okay.
we don't go out there looking really necessarily. Almost all of our acquisition people have come to us and really said, listen, we see the quality of what you do and we want you to carry the torch. But yes, we will continue to look to grow. And I think, listen, competing against Facebook, Google, we can't compete against them. We literally can't. I think that they're, so powerful that they're like a whole nother unisphere.
Are you in the opinion that they should be paying us for our content? That they
I mean, I don't know if they should be paying us for our content, but I think that something has to change.
Okay.
We'll say that. And I was listening to your podcast about the Local Journalism Sustainability Act.
Right.
I have to tell all the publishers, get on the phone and call your Congress members, because I called 15 of them and I got 14 out of them to sign up in New York. And guess what? None of them knew about it.
Seriously. That's amazing.
Really, every publisher has to get on the phone. And they actually shouldn't call the Congress member. They should call their chief of staff.
All right, so you're now New York. You're in Philly. You're handling metros, and you're doing exceptionally well. Why didn't you? I have to ask this question, and please, it just bothered me when I was exploring your company. Why didn't you go after the Village Voice? Why didn't you pick that brand up when it was available? You just didn't see value in it?
Well, a couple of things. One is we rarely call people and say, "Will you sell?"
Okay.
And the second was, I don't know, some billionaire came in, paid a fortune for it, and drove it into the ground and closed it.
I know, but that brand still should have had some life left.
Well, I agree with you. I think it was a travesty.
I mean, come on.
Terrible. It was a crown jewel of this city for a long time, and it was, unfortunately, in this business, it's a reality in certainly in New York, and I'm sure other parts of the country, that people get into this, as a hobby. And when you treat something as a hobby, it's not a business, it's not a passion. And, bad things can happen quickly. And logic doesn't necessarily have to take place.
That's a thread that the successful people I'm interviewing and those that I meet will agree with you 100%. You got to have die on the hill attitude. You see what I mean? You're
especially in this business.
Yeah, it's like when I took over E&P, and just as an aside, everybody's downsizing here, and I made the magazine bigger, if you remember.
Yeah.
And everybody thought I
was the podcast. Listen, that's the biggest thing in our business.
Yeah.
Is too many people have gone too long not reinvesting in the business.
Exactly.
What business is going to succeed? I don't care what it is, if you don't continue to drive money back into it. And that's people, and that's technology, and that's taking risk. Because you know what? We bet on a digital editor before we could make money online. We knew that, but we said, listen, we have to invest in this.
Well, there's no question.
A lot of times I think our website drives ad sales in print.
But look at the success you have with the Brownstone site. You launched that before the Facebook phenomenon.
I acquired.
Oh, you acquired that
I
site.
will tell you this. We bought the website, which had tremendous traffic and is actually a very strong standalone digital business. Not too many people can say that. People
That's
say,
true.
oh, my website makes money. Well, let's start adding up the expenses of your reporters and tell me if it makes money. So that's actually a real business. But with that website, we started a podcast. We started a high-end annual magazine. We started events. So, we took that brand and started to do other things with it. But
I'm looking at some of your brands. Just what is Caribbean Life? What does that have to do with New York?
it's the largest Caribbean American community in the United States of America.
Okay.
And we
So
distribute to those communities, and we do news both locally and from the Caribbean, just for that community.
in English.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You have Spanish publications, correct?
Spanish, El Correo throughout New York City, and Noticia throughout Long Island.
Anything for the Asian community?
No, the Asian community is very competitive, and they have a lot of different publications already.
How about for alternative lifestyles and other things? Is there any other
Well,
narrow?
Gay City News is one of the most respected LGBTQ media outlets in the U.S.
Which one is that, sir?
Gay City News.
And that's yours. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yes,
Excellent.
distributed throughout New York City.
Excellent. And then what about the suburbs? Are you thinking of moving a little bit farther out into Long Island in the days to come?
Well, Long Island, we cover all of Long Island from Nassau through Montauk. So
Okay,
we cover
excellent.
all of Long Island.
Right.
The Long Island Press, Noticia, and Dan's Papers.
Excellent. Well, this has been a fascinating interview, Josh. Your company not only is living the dream when it comes to, how should I say this, embracing a multimedia world. I love that because you're not just a newspaper. I always say that we're not a newspaper, we're an information company. I mean, I always scream, there's nothing wrong with print, but you just can't live it in a one singular mind. But you've cracked the nut on hyperlocal. I mean, that seems to be the challenge today. Look at, when Gannett takes over a local newspaper and starts throwing in regional news and wonders why it starts to die with its audience. You are very hyperlocal.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but I don't know that I've cracked the nut because you know what? Evolution is continuing to happen and happening faster than it ever has.
Of course.
So I think it's always about what is next because what is next is happening tomorrow. So I think our industry is going to continue to evolve real quick and faster than any of us wanted to. And large part of that is COVID. It's really, caused things to evolve quicker than they would have.
There's no question that crisis always accelerates change.
Yeah.
So we're watching that happen as we speak. But correct me if I'm wrong, according to the data that's out there, COVID also increased the demand for local news content. And
Yeah, I mean, we saw our traffic skyrocket
there you go.
during that period. Does that mean you're going to make more money? Not necessarily. I mean, that's the tough part right now. So I think we'll just have to wait and see. But I think that people do have a renewed respect for quality journalism. I think the internet blogs starting, people thought, cheap content doesn't matter where I get it. I'll get it anywhere I want. And now they're starting to realize, well, maybe reading from not a reliable source is not the best idea. Maybe I should support my local media company or what I respect as the local source of information.
Josh, CEO of Schneps Media. If someone wants to get in hold of you and learn a little bit more about your company or how you're driving your sales or increasing your content or breaking barriers into the multimedia world, will you share your email address with us right now, please?
Sure, I'll give you my easy email. It's
Okay,
Josh, 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 at qns.com, short for Queens. So Josh at qns.com.
Schneps Media. Josh, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Please say hi to your mom for me. I'm pretty sure I did meet her at a conference years ago. And congratulations on your growth and success. And do me a favor, wear a mask and stay healthy, my friend.
Absolutely. You too, Mike. Thank you. And keep up the good work at Editor and Publisher. I enjoy going on the site every day.